Imagine waking up tomorrow to a world where the sky is no longer blue, where the sun, the same sun that has risen every single morning for 4.5 billion years, is gone. Not destroyed, just blocked, hidden behind a wall of ash, smoke, and debris so thick that daylight becomes a memory. The temperature drops, the crops fail, and then, slowly, silently, the plants begin to die. This isn't science fiction. This isn't a movie plot. This is what scientists call nuclear winter, and it is one of the most devastating, least talked about consequences of nuclear war. We spend so much time thinking about the blast, the fire, the immediate destruction. But what happens after? What happens to the living world, to the forests, the fields, the tiny seeds buried in the soil, when the bombs stop falling and the real silence begins? Here's what nobody is asking, but everybody should be. If the plants die, how long do we survive? The answer will change the way you see everything. And we're going to give it to you today, along with something else. Something that actual scientists, survivalists, and governments around the world have been quietly working on for decades. A plan, a real plan, to save the green world from the fire of man. Stay with us, because what we're about to share, especially toward the end of this video, could be the most important survival knowledge you've ever encountered. Welcome to Origins of Earth Vault, the channel that goes beyond the history books, beyond the headlines, and into the forgotten corners of human knowledge. We explore the Earth's deepest secrets, its lost wisdom, and its most urgent truths. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the bell, because this channel is building something rare. A vault of knowledge that the modern world has left behind. And like the science of saving plants from nuclear war, it's more relevant today than ever before. Now, let's go back to the beginning of this story. Not the beginning of nuclear war, but the beginning of why plants matter more than you've ever been told. Long before humans built cities, before we discovered fire, before we carved tools from stone, plants ruled this planet. They have been here for over 700 million years. Think about that number for a moment. 700 million years. They survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions that blotted out the sun for years. And yet today, in the span of a single human lifetime, we have built weapons powerful enough to threaten what ancient glaciers could not destroy. Plants are not decoration. They are not background scenery in the story of life. They are the story. Every breath you take, every single inhale, is made possible by photosynthesis, by a chemical process so elegant, so ancient, so perfectly designed that scientists are still trying to fully replicate it in a lab. Plants take carbon dioxide and sunlight and turn them into oxygen and energy. They are, in the most literal sense possible, the lungs of this planet. But it goes deeper than oxygen. The entire food chain, from the smallest insect to the largest mammal, runs on plant energy. The wheat in your bread, the corn in your cereal, the grass that fed the cow whose milk is in your coffee. It's all plants, all the way down. Without them, the food system doesn't slow down. It collapses completely within weeks. So when we talk about saving plants during a nuclear war, we're not talking about botany. We're talking about the survival of every living thing on this planet, including us. And the danger, the real danger, is something most people have never even considered. Here's what actually happens to plant life when nuclear weapons are detonated. Most people think of radiation first. And yes, radiation is devastating. A high-dose radiation environment destroys the DNA inside plant cells, disrupting their ability to reproduce, to grow, to photosynthesize. Plants near the epicenter of a nuclear explosion are simply vaporized. Those farther away suffer radiation damage that stunts growth, causes mutations, and in many cases leads to death over days and weeks. The soil itself becomes contaminated, not just the surface, but deep into the earth where seeds lie dormant, waiting for spring. But here's the part that stops scientists cold, the part that keeps researchers up at night. It isn't the immediate blast radius. It isn't even the radiation that spreads across the landscape in the days after. It's what comes weeks and months later. It's the sky. When nuclear weapons are detonated, especially if multiple cities are struck, they trigger massive firestorms. These firestorms send enormous columns of smoke and soot into the upper atmosphere. And unlike a regular storm cloud, this soot doesn't fall back down with rain. It rises into the stratosphere, where it can circulate around the entire globe for months, maybe years. And when that happens, the sun disappears. Not metaphorically, literally. The amount of sunlight reaching the Earth's surface drops dramatically. Some models predict a reduction of up to 90% in certain regions. Temperatures plunge, even in summer. The growing season, that precious window of warmth and light that farmers depend on, it vanishes. What scientists call nuclear winter sets in, and for plants, it is an extinction-level event. Think about it this way. Plants don't need much to survive, but they need two things absolutely: light and warmth. Nuclear winter takes both at once, across the entire planet. Even plants that survive the initial blasts, even the radiation-resistant species clinging to contaminated soil, they face a world without sunlight. And without sunlight, photosynthesis stops. And when photosynthesis stops, real life, begins to unravel. This is the crisis. This is the thing that almost nobody talks about when they discuss nuclear war. And here's what makes it even more haunting. We've already seen a preview of it. And what happened next surprised everyone. August 6th, 1945. Hiroshima, Japan. A single atomic bomb, one weapon, destroyed an entire city in seconds. The heat near the epicenter reached tens of thousands of degrees. Everything within a mile was obliterated. The ground was scorched. The rivers steamed. And for weeks after, scientists and survivors alike believed that nothing would grow in that city again. There were even claims, repeated widely in the aftermath, that Hiroshima would remain barren for 75 years, that the land was dead, poisoned beyond recovery. But nature had other plans. Within weeks of the bombing, something extraordinary began to happen in the ruins of Hiroshima. Survivors walking through the ash and debris began to notice something green pushing up through the scorched earth. Oleander flowers, delicate, pink, impossibly alive, began blooming in the destroyed landscape. Then came the ferns, the mosses, and slowly, in the months that followed, trees began to put out new buds. 3 days later, Nagasaki suffered the same fate. And there too, against every expectation, nature fought back. Japanese botanists and scientists who studied the aftermath were stunned by what they found. Certain species not only survived the radiation, they thrived in the disturbed soil. The oleander became so deeply associated with this recovery that it was later named the official flower of Hiroshima, a symbol not of destruction, but of resilience, of life returning to places that death had claimed. What scientists learned from Hiroshima and Nagasaki changed our understanding of plant biology forever. They discovered that many plant species have a remarkable capacity for DNA repair, that seeds buried, even shallow in the soil, were shielded enough from the initial radiation to survive. That mycorrhizal fungi, the underground networks that connect plant roots and help them share nutrients, can persist in contaminated environments and help new growth establish itself. The Earth, it turned out, was not as fragile as we feared. But, and this is a critical, but Hiroshima and Nagasaki were single detonations. 2 bombs. The nuclear arsenals that exist today contain thousands of warheads. A modern nuclear conflict would not produce 2 blast zones. It could produce hundreds. And the cumulative effect on the atmosphere, the smoke, the soot, the nuclear winter, would be on a scale that 1945 never approached. So the question isn't whether plants can recover from a nuclear bomb. We know they can. The question is whether plants can survive a nuclear war. And the answer to that question depends entirely on what we do before the bombs ever fall. And this is where it gets fascinating. Because while most of the world has been focused on diplomacy, missile defense, and the politics of nuclear deterrence, a quiet, remarkable community of scientists, botanists, and forward-thinking governments has been doing something extraordinary. They've been building an ark, not a boat, not a bunker filled with canned food and ammunition. A living ark, a vault of seeds and genetic material and plant knowledge so vast and so carefully protected that even if the worst happened, even if the bombs fell and the sky went dark, the blueprint of the green world would still exist, waiting, ready to rebuild. The most famous of these efforts is the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, located on a remote Arctic island between mainland Norway and the North Pole, carved deep into a frozen mountain. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault is one of the most extraordinary structures ever built by human hands. It opened in 2008 and today holds over 1.3 million distinct seed samples from nearly every country on Earth. Wheat varieties that date back centuries. Rice strains that were almost lost to the modern agricultural system. Vegetables, herbs, grasses, and wild plant species that most people have never heard of, but which could one day be the foundation of a rebuilt food system. The vault was designed specifically to survive catastrophe. Earthquakes, rising sea levels, power outages, and yes, even the indirect effects of nuclear conflict. The permafrost in a mountain keeps the seeds frozen even without electricity. The location is so remote that it sits outside any plausible nuclear target zone. It is in the truest sense a backup for life on Earth. But here's something that almost nobody talks about. Svalbard is not alone. There are over 1,700 seed banks operating around the world. The United States National Plant Germplasm System alone maintains more than 500,000 seed accessions. Fort Collins, Colorado houses one of the most comprehensive collections of plant genetic material on the planet. These aren't just scientific curiosities, they are insurance policies. Carefully maintained, temperature-controlled, cataloged with extraordinary precision. A library written not in words, but in seeds. And yet, as remarkable as these institutions are, they face their own vulnerabilities. Power grids fail. Funding gets cut. Facilities flood. The Syrian Seed Bank in Aleppo, which had been a critical repository of Middle Eastern agricultural heritage, was nearly destroyed during the Syrian civil war. Scientists had to make desperate emergency transfers to Svalbard just to save what they could. War, it turns out, threatens seed banks the same way it threatens everything else, which is exactly why scientists are now thinking bigger, thinking deeper, thinking underground. Here is something that Hiroshima taught us, something quiet and profound that the history books rarely emphasize. When survivors returned to the city in the weeks after the bombing, many of them found themselves drawn to the small green shoots pushing up through the rubble. Not because they were botanists, not because they understood the science of plant recovery, but because in the middle of incomprehensible destruction, life was still happening. Something was still trying. There is something in the human heart that responds to that, something ancient and deep. We are connected to the green world in ways that go beyond biology, beyond food and oxygen and ecosystem services. Plants were here before us. They will, almost certainly, be here after us. And they carry within them, within their seeds and roots and chemical memory, a resilience that has outlasted every catastrophe this planet has ever endured. The challenge we face is not whether plants can survive a nuclear war. They might. Some of them will. Life has a way of persisting that defies our worst predictions. The challenge is whether the right plants survive, whether enough food crops, enough diversity, enough genetic heritage is preserved to give the humans who survive a chance at rebuilding. That is the variable we can control. That is the choice still available to us right now, while there is still time. Scientists are building seed vaults in mountains. Engineers are designing underground farms lit by artificial stars. botanists are cataloging the most radiation-resistant plant species on Earth. Ordinary people, quietly, without headlines, are planting heirloom gardens and saving seeds in paper envelopes in their kitchen drawers. All of them are doing the same thing. They're making a bet on the future. They're saying, with their actions, that the story of life on this planet is not over, that the green world is worth protecting, that what we preserve today may become the foundation of everything that comes after. That is not naivety. That is the oldest human wisdom there is. Plant a seed. Protect it. Pass it on. The Earth has survived worse than us, but it has never survived us quite like this. The choice of what we leave behind, in vaults under frozen mountains, in community seed libraries, in backyard gardens, in the careful hands of people who still know how to save a seed. That choice is ours. And it starts now. Thank you for watching this full documentary. If this video moved you, challenged you, or taught you something you didn't know, please leave a comment below. Tell us, what's the one thing you're going to do differently after watching this? Start saving seeds? Plant a perennial garden? Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. This community, Origins of Earth Vault, exists because knowledge like this deserves to survive. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video. And stay close, because our next documentary goes even deeper into the forgotten world of plant survival, exploring the ancient species that have outlasted every mass extinction in Earth's history and what they can teach us about the future. The vault is open. The knowledge is waiting. We'll see you in the next one.